Welcome to Connect and Collaborate. I am Alex Hopkins filling in for Tammy Schaefer, your regular on-air producer. Today we are connecting with Summer Sorenson Bain from Manufacturer's Edge. She is the Chief of Programs and Operations. And along with her we have Shane Barber, Director of Organizational Excellence, which I find a fascinating title as I am not good at organization at all. So
that's why we're here.
Fantastic. Tell me more.
So just to put some context to this, we're a part of an organization called Manufacturer's Edge, and Manufacturer's Edge was formed in 1994 as part of a Department of Commerce program that helps strengthen and grow manufacturers in Colorado. And so we serve 6,000 manufacturers around the state, and about 85% of those manufacturers have fewer than 20 employees.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a little known fact.
Yeah.
And we go in and we look at these manufacturers and try to understand what is their barrier to growth. And we look at how can we help you improve your processes? How can we help you identify new markets? And we see so many people that attach to the latest and greatest program, and a lot of them fail.
Okay.
And so we've spent a lot of time trying to understand why they fail. Why have they struggled to implement and execute and grow? And we find that a lot of that's because they're not addressing their human capital.
Okay.
So they come in and they try to fix processes, but never look at the people aspect of that.
Okay.
So we have spent a lot of time trying to figure out what does that mean for us. And so we partnered with Shane Barber, who was out of our New Mexico center.
Okay.
And started looking at how can we get to the root cause of what these individual challenges are and help companies really have strategic growth. And so we started developing a program called Organizational Excellence.
Okay.
And it's really how to transform a company to engage their most critical and most expensive asset, their human capital.
Okay.
So that's what Organizational Excellence is, and I'll let Shane explain a little bit more beyond that.
Yeah, appreciate that. I'll give some of my background and tell a little story here about where organizational excellence began for myself in the manufacturing environments. And so I've spent over 30 years in manufacturing. I'm a certified welder by trade.
Okay.
I would like to say I started walking and started building things immediately when I was born. So it just runs in my DNA, I guess I would say. And as I moved through trade school, worked in the trades, I saw that organization that I was working for struggle.
Yeah.
It wouldn't give the right training. It didn't give the right direction to its people. The people, the most important asset, was building their products, but yet they invested more in financial systems and other structures, but never trained us how to integrate those in to build a better product.
Okay.
And so it's typically a very common thing, but I noticed that being fairly young in my new work career, as I moved into the world of manufacturing, exiting college with a production operations management degree, learning how to run factories, I actually went and did that. I did that for a top 100 company in the semiconductor industry. And I was a production supervisor managing people twice my age, 3 times the talent that I ever had. And the more I tried to do process improvement, I started to see if I just spend more time with the people quotient on the other side of that, then my processes got better.
Okay.
Imagine that. You engage people in process and you get better results. I ended up running a substantial shift, 550 technicians, 30 supervisors, $4 billion in assets. Wow. My last role in manufacturing of that 12-year run. And we spent time on developing as much time the human capital, my assets, the folks that were on the team that had 3 times the expertise, skill, and capability. And at times, we even felt like we were spending less time on the process. And what we got as a result was we were 20% above safety, quality, cost, output, and the most important, morale than any other factory worldwide. Ever.
Those numbers speak for themselves, really.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I like to say is we untap the human potential.
Yeah.
Once you do that, you create pride. You create pride, you start getting results. You get results. It's exponential.
Yeah.
And so that's where my journey really began. I moved into other roles, organization development, which is industrial psychology, to learn how to untap that potential.
Okay.
That moved me into human resources, short role, appreciative of that, is learning how to teach managers how to manage better, and human resource folks how to work with managers to untap that potential, and then into executive leadership, development, training, those kind of things. And through that entire journey of my background, realizing the more I spent on the people side, is the more process output that I end up getting and developing that, not only for the teams that I ran, but for teams that I had no responsibilities for. Yeah. That began the organization excellence journey, and documenting that process, and how do we bring that to manufacturers, statewide.
Right.
Yeah, and so that gives some of the background from an organization excellence perspective. The major components that organizations don't tap into, as I've touched on, the people, but most companies don't even set a unified direction, and if they do, it's only once, strategy.
Right.
So I'm going to start a business. I'm going to manufacture some things. We can build the best pen in the world. Let's go do that. Then they stop focusing on what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and whom they're going to do it with.
Yeah.
And so they don't touch that strategy, and so they don't have that alignment. They don't align their resources. They don't align their capital expenses. They don't align all the cogs in the manufacturing wheel to achieve what they want to go off and do.
Right.
That's what organization excellence does. It looks at 5 major components of a business, aligns those to what the strategy is, the organization's capability and what is required to achieve that strategy. And then you do a deliberate organization design to get the intended results that you want.
I love that. It's an uncomplicated process to figure out a complicated problem, right? That's lovely.
That's what we strive for, is how can we give a simple process, a simple way to assess your organization's health, so business leaders, managers, and people that are working in the organization, how can they do it on their own and sustain those results once we've come in, helped, support, no matter what that looks like. It could be some clients we have that can be really small, 3 to 5 employees. I've been at the smallest one I've been involved in, and a business owner, and we've used the same model. Also been in the multi-billion-dollar companies to where they say they have it all figured out. They're big, and they have capability, but they don't have the alignment. And so we use a standard process that's simple, to where they can follow that process to get those results exponential.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. We're going to continue this conversation in the next segment. We have Sorenson Bain with Manufacturers Edge, Chief of Programs and Operations, and Shane Barber, who just joined them and is the Director of Organizational Excellence. Stay tuned. We'll be right back on Connect and Collaborate. And welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. I'm Alex Hopkins, filling in for Tammy Schaefer today. And we have Manufacturers Edge, Sorenson Bain, Chief of Programs and Operations, here with us. And we are talking to Shane Barber, also with Manufacturers Edge, Director of Organizational Excellence. In the last segment, we did a little definition of that, and we got some great information. So let's continue that conversation.
You got it. And so in the previous segment, we talked all about how do you tap into the human potential.
Right.
How do you get, in my mind, or in my words, exponential results out of your most important asset that Summer has referred to here. And to do that, it's a very deliberate design and development process.
Okay.
Hopefully it's simple. I'm going to walk through the key components of it. We want to keep it simple. We want to keep it in a place where companies, no matter the size and the complexity, they have their own capability. Once we've gone in, helped them assess their health, put systems and processes in place, give them the capabilities to sustain it over time on their own.
Gotcha.
That's really our mission, is to help grow manufacturing, help grow their capability so they can sustain the results they require now and in the future. And so to do that, first we got to talk about what typically happens. What typically happens, and I've lived this world for 30 years in manufacturing in multiple organizations, is organizations become very tactical focused. They get very myopic in what they have to do. I produce X widgets, this pen, as we talked earlier, X widgets, X amount per day, per week, per month, and let's just get as many out as we can.
Right.
Most of the time, they focus on that process, and they feel the more they can improve the widget making process, the better the result they'll get.
Right.
And what they miss out on is they do not train and develop, again, that human capital.
Yeah.
Direct labor, folks that are producing that on the production floor, and even if companies have done that, they don't go to the indirect side, the back office, the design, the billing, the AR, accounts receivable, payable, all the cogs in the manufacturing wheel that ensure that we can meet our demand, sell that, build it, develop it, book it, ship it, and get it out the entire supply chain. And so you got to treat all that human capital in the middle there.
Right. Well, you can have the greatest machine in the world, right? But if you don't have somebody that knows how to run it properly, it's not going to get you your results anyway.
Yep.
So it's perfect sense.
Yeah, and to add to that, if anybody has ever seen Lucille Ball, do you ever see the segment where they speed up the production belt?
Yes,
the chocolate candy.
And they got it in their hat, and Ethel is they're about to get fired, and they you're doing such a great job, speed up the belt. That's what I'm talking about, is most companies focus on just speeding up the belt.
Right.
But when they speed up the belt, they cause unintended consequences or unintended results.
Yeah.
And so when we meet business leaders, they'll say things like, we just can't seem to produce on time. Do you measure it?
Right.
Well, we have some measures. We just can't seem, my sales guys, they can sell it, but we can't produce it. My people just don't seem like they get it. We don't have the skills required. And every one of those conversations, the old adage is when you point at somebody, 3 fingers point back at you.
Yes.
It's pointing back at leadership's and management's ability to look at not the symptoms, but root cause.
Absolutely.
And so that's the process we employ with them is let's do a good root cause analysis in 5 major areas that organizational excellence touches on. Those 5 are, I mentioned strategy. Strategy is at the apex. It actually lives right below vision and mission.
Okay.
But strategy is, why are we here? What are we producing? What do we do different than anybody else in our market segment?
Right.
Sounds pretty simple, but a lot of companies touch strategy once. I'm going to build the best pen in the world. Never look at it.
Right.
They never revisit it. And what occurs in our marketplace is, with strategy, is it shifts underneath our feet. The market changes. Immediately. Once you come out with a strategy, you got to be monitoring and managing it to make sure the market conditions, the industry hasn't shifted.
Right.
And so we look at strategy. If they have a strategy, great. Let's clarify it. Let's look at it, and let's see what current state is and what future state should be.
All right.
So we'll do, an assessment on how healthy, how robust the strategy is. The next stop after strategy, you have to ask, what capabilities does the organization require to achieve that strategy? And those capabilities can be people, property, plant, equipment, technology. What will enable us to meet this strategy? Again, if they've looked at strategy, they skip. A lot of times this step will be skipped. They'll buy the new manufacturing tool. It'll create even more widgets, but they might not buy the software that can link up their whole production floor, front office to back office to, enabling that it ships out the door.
Right.
So they don't look at the systems, the people, property, plant, equipment, technology, what they might need to land that strategy. So we surface that.
Okay.
What are you going to need to enable the strategy? Then the very next stop, and imagine a star. This is all in a model called the STAR model by Jay Galbraith. That's where the research comes from. But strategy is at the very top axis of the star, the top point. The next point you're looking at is structure to the right.
Okay.
How should the organization be structured to meet the strategy? When most business owners think structure, oh yeah, we have an org chart. Great. Structure by function.
Right.
Form and function, not by people's names and frames and hierarchy. And in structure, silos are always live in that structure. And it's inevitable. There's silos in every organization.
Right.
Most people would say, well, give an example. I'll give you one from the most famous one in manufacturing is engineering versus manufacturing. I don't know if I said versus. Don't know if I should have said that. Engineering and manufacturing.
There you go.
But the versus comes into play here. So you have 2 silos.
Yeah.
do you have the right silos, and where do those silos need to talk together to collaborate and communicate to achieve not only designing the world's best pen, but building the world's best pen to the best standard, to shipping that pen and getting it in the hands of the customer when they want and need it.
Right.
So we look at structure. How are they structured? What silos are you going to create? There's tons of books and materials saying build the flattest organization. It's inevitable. You will have silos no matter how flat it is.
Yeah.
And so what are those silos? And then what are the unintended consequences if we create those silos, and what are the processes that will tie them together? That's the next point on this STAR model.
Okay.
It's called the lateral processes. Lateral because it ties the silos together. It laterally cuts across them.
Okay.
So we'll look at their process and systems. The world of manufacturing process lives in this point of the STAR.
Okay.
It can be manufacturing processes. It can be accounting practices. It can be a CRM, database to software. Any process that ties the human capital to the production. And when I say production, people say, well, I don't work in production. If you're producing, billing and shipping, slips, you're in the production machine. You're part of the machine.
Yeah.
And so those lateral processes. So that stop on the STAR is how do we tie those silos together to make sure that they work together to achieve the same results. Next point on the STAR is common metrics and rewards. If you want people to react and interact in a way that will meet your strategy, the way that will deliver the intended results, then you got to have common metrics. My metrics when I was in production was safety, quality, cost, output, and morale. My engineering cohorts were the same metrics. Common metrics caused us to behave and work together. When I first started, they didn't have an emphasis on my metrics in manufacturing. It was velocity, number of widgets out the door.
Okay.
Engineering's was quality. So when these two silos would come together, the versus, I'd have an engineer say, we need to take this tool down because it's starting to produce marginal quality. I'd say, I'm not measured on that. I didn't say it like that, but it's the reality.
Right.
Not measured. I'm going to do what I'm getting measured on.
Right.
We later changed the metric to quality with velocity for output.
Right.
And so when that happened, engineering, manufacturing, we got to have quality with velocity working together in that lateral process. And then the last point of the STAR, and the most important part of that STAR, is people practices. This one's often overlooked.
Yes.
That's where, Summer, you've said, our most important asset of organizations is people. And that's where they don't develop them. And people say, develop our people. Well, we train them. We give them tools.
Yeah.
We give them this screwdriver and this wrench and do that. But do you train them how to use that through your iterative manufacturing process to get the intended results?
Right.
And it's not just people doing production, but it's all people in all functions. Train them to use the lateral processes so the structure meets the strategy against the metrics they're measured on. And so it's training, development. And to train and develop people, you got to evaluate them.
Right.
You got to give them feedback.
Yeah.
It's the only way we grow. If you were in school and you didn't get feedback, you'd think you're doing the best job ever.
And then all of a sudden you have this F. You don't know where it came from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is the I would say this problem, this pinch point in the machine, these are all pinch points I'm describing, is where leadership and management do not realize that they are spending money on software, spending money on tools, but they don't spend the money on this asset once again that can get exponential results.
Right.
Teaching them how to use the tools and the processes to get it out. So by those 5 points, the strategy being aligned to the structure, the lateral processes, the rewards and metrics, and the people practices to achieve it, that when those are all in alignment, that's what creates org excellence.
Okay.
It's a balance between when people are process capable to produce the intended results.
Fantastic. This is a great process.
Yeah, and hopefully it's simple. And so where do you start? Where do you start looking at an organization? We look at those 5 points exclusively.
Awesome.
It can be in interviewing employees. It can be through a formal assessment we have for leadership management teams. 40 questions. A portion of those touch on each one of these parts of the STAR. And then we'll go in and verify that with employees and ask them, what are the challenges of the organization? What are the opportunities for change? And then I love this question. It gets great results engaging people. If I had a magic wand, gave you 3 wishes, what would you change immediately to meet the organization's results?
Oh, we're going to find out more about that question as we come back from break here on Connect and Collaborate with Shane Barber, Director of Organizational Excellence, and Summer Sorenson Bain, Chief of Programs and Operations. Hi, I'm Alex Hopkins. Welcome back to Connect and Collaborate. Today we are talking with Manufacturer's Edge. We have Summer Sorenson Bain, Chief of Programs and Operations. We also have Shane Barber, the Director of Organizational Excellence, which is what we're focusing on today. So we were just talking about this STAR that's very important in the process of achieving organizational excellence. Let's jump right in.
Right. So Manufacturer's Edge, our focus is to help strengthen and grow manufacturers in Colorado. We're part of a national network under Commerce to help strengthen the U.S. manufacturing base. And a lot of organizations have done a lot of offshoring and sending their manufacturing elsewhere. Now we're seeing this insurgence of manufacturing coming back. And we've got this skills gap that exists within the workspace. And so Manufacturer's Edge, we support companies in helping understand what their gaps are to help grow and strengthen their business. And we're evaluated on the economic impact we have to the companies we work with. And we see so many with the best of intentions, but lack the right tools.
Yeah.
So with a 2.3% unemployment rate, trying to address the skilled labor market, we are trying to come up with tools and systems that help companies ensure that they can be successful with the process and the people. So that was the development of organizational excellence and the STAR model with the 5 points.
Yeah, and so in the last segment we were talking about before we went to break, how do you assess an organization's health? Remember, these points on the STAR start at strategy. Clear strategy. If it's unclear, you're going to get misalignment from all those that work in an organization.
Right.
Confusion it'll cause. With the structure, which is the right of the STAR, the next point, it's do you have the right structure to meet the strategy? Do you have the right people alignment to ensure that you can manage that moving forward? The next one that ties the silos together, that lives in structure, is lateral processes. How do you get silos like manufacturing and engineering tied together to the same result with a common metric? That common metric is the another point of that STAR, metrics and rewards. The more you can make those common, the more you can drive people's behavior to the end result. And then the last part of the STAR was people practices. I'm going to touch on people practices because we've said earlier, people are the most, and it's a coined phrase, right? The most important asset are our people. Not many people live like that in manufacturing. I work for a Fortune 100 company. 105,000 people at its time, worldwide manufacturing. They had that on their values badge, but did they live it? Did they really develop their people to be process capable? And so it's a challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
So we're going to go deep in that one because that is where, at minimum, research shows there is 20% untapped capacity in your people today. Your people might be busy. They can't handle any more work that you give them.
Right.
But if you align their work, again, to the strategy and the structure, you can become more process capable. So with that, people, what lives there is people practices. What is most common when we enter a company, we say, how clear are your roles and expectations for your folks? Management leadership says, it's really clear, really clear. We have job descriptions. And I say, great, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
And so they'll be very proud of those, very protective at times. And we say, well, we take job descriptions and we do intense, specific role design. And they're like, well, say more about that. And what that role design is we focus on what are the key accountabilities for each position.
Right.
What are the direct responsibilities they must follow through or work activities that they must perform to meet those key accountabilities? And then what are the metrics that are going to drive that position to be successful or that they're held accountable to meet? And then lastly, what are the key behaviors we aspire for all employees in this organization to actually perform to?
Okay.
And so once we do that role design and we're talking to leaders, they say, well, we have that, let's say, in our job descriptions. What I tell folks is, and everybody out there that has ever read one, most of the time job descriptions, they're just built to advertise for employment.
Right, right.
And if you've ever tried to evaluate somebody against that, or as an employee, if you've ever, and I urge people on the line, read your job description
Right.
And tell me how your manager is going to assess you against that, your skills. Because they all end with, and all other duties as assigned.
Right.
So they're vague. They're meant to, again, just to advertise, get the right player in the seat. But what do you do when you get that player in the seat? What do you do when you get that person hired? This is where our integrated people system in this point of the star, our services really comes to play for clients. What we do is we develop position expectations with that criteria mentioned, accountabilities, responsibilities, metrics, behaviors. And we don't do that to people, we do it with them. We do it, people in the job families will sit down and say, what should you be doing to meet this strategy? Not current state, future state, what should you be doing?
Right.
So we harvest that information from them, we put it in our infrastructure or our template. Then we meet with managers and leaders once that is clarified. We put percent of time for each one of these accountabilities. And I'll give you an example. When I was a manufacturing manager, mine were safety, quality, cost, output, and morale.
Right.
5 accountabilities that I must do to meet my job requirement and have the factory meet its requirements. And so we put a percent of time. How much time in a given week should I spend on safety, improvement? How much time on quality, cost, people, so on and so forth. Once that's done and managers give their final feedback to it, that parent document gets turned into, that's the hub of this integrated people system. You can turn that into the hiring criteria. You can take all the information that people gave you, turn it into interview questions by accountability area, and then when you're looking for those folks, you can share what the full scope of the job is. And that's important because a lot of people see job descriptions, I can do that. They get hired. They realize it's called impostor syndrome. What am I doing here? Do I have the skills to do this job? Why would I, and what do I need to do to improve? Managers usually don't know what that role entails.
Right.
So their coaching, their training, development isn't that strong. So we can use it for interviewing. We can use it for evaluations.
Yeah.
Onboarding of employees, build a training plan out of that same criteria.
Right.
We can use it for succession management. And I call it management, not planning. You should always manage your successors at every level of technical need in the organization. You can use it for performance management. I did mention it's accountability. Accountability is a good thing.
Yes.
But performance management, giving people feedback they need to improve. And lastly, for career development. So we like to pick things for our clients that we do one scope of work that can touch systematically a larger part of their business that will make improvement. You do that one people criteria, build it with the people, don't do it to them, do it with them, and then you have this integrated people system that you can manage your human capital, lead them through, develop them, train them, and hire them, and succeed them through your company. That's the point of the star of people practices. That's the human capital. That's where you get exponential results.
Right.
Yeah, from that perspective.
Now, there's one more piece to this that you've talked about before is the accountability matrix.
Yeah, thanks for touching on it. Now imagine that star again. You got people practices, and you're starting to do this role design, but you touch on these accountabilities. That touches on the structure.
Yes.
This star is interconnected. You cannot imagine you're tuning a laser beam and each point is a knob. You can't adjust people practices without looking at, how does that change or alter the structure?
Okay.
Role design lives in the silos in those areas. And so I've been with clients who say, yeah, the role should be this, but I'm like, wait a minute, you just altered your structure. If we don't catch that,
right,
what we'll do is we'll keep moving forward, and then the organization will figure out we're not getting the intended results.
Right.
That's where you have multiple reorganization efforts within a year, is because they don't tune the entire organization or the system. So you got to look at the structure when you're doing role design. You got to look at the lateral processes that people have to do to accomplish their work, the work activities. You got to look at the metrics and rewards, and lastly, the behaviors, which is in the people practices.
Yeah.
It all is integrated and needs to be aligned.
That's fantastic. I think this is fascinating. This is not something I had considered, manufacturing. I tend to think of very technical people, right? And so the people skills are really important to that, and it's not something that you think about. So I'm enjoying this conversation. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. We've got Summer Sorenson Bain from Manufacturers Edge, Chief of Programs and Operations, and we're talking with Shane Barber, Director of Organizational Excellence. We will be right back here on Connect and Collaborate. Thank you. Colorado Business Roundtable. We are touching in today with Manufacturer's Edge. We have Summer Sorenson Bain, who is the Chief of Programs and Operations, as well as Shane Barber, the Director of Organizational Excellence. Again, fantastic title. It's fascinating what we're talking about. You guys have developed this. I know that Manufacturer's Edge is focused on helping companies really get their products, in line, and their people to really push out great products. And so you've developed this organizational excellence program to tune in with that. So we've touched on the 5-point star, and we touched on the most important part of that star, which is people practices. So let's continue there.
All right. As we were talking before, it's imagine this star as you're tuning a laser beam. Or if you're out there and you're in a manufacturing company tuning a tool that has multiple knobs to get it to be able to produce the quality results that you need it to do. Our organizations are no different. In fact, this isn't just something that you could do for a manufacturing company. I've spent the last 6 years doing it in all industries because all industries produce a product, no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And so, but if you're in manufacturing today, imagine that tool. So it's about tuning it. It's about alignment. Where leaders get nervous about this part in the conversation is, are you talking about a complete reorganization effort?
Right.
We're like, we don't know. We don't do reorgs. I have a bumper sticker on my car. I don't do reorgs. No, my other big, company is Org Excellence. Just kidding. But they get nervous because that is change. That is change, and people don't like change. We don't as humans. And so what we do is, as we're assessing a company's health, the points of this star, and it's not us coming in with a clipboard and doing it by ourselves. It's working with people and asking them, what is the current state? What do you currently do? What should you do to meet this long-term strategy? And so we're working with them to do that. And as we go on each points of this star model, we're looking for what's working well.
Right.
What's not working well, and how we can integrate what they're currently doing and take them from good to great.
Yeah.
And so we literally leverage the current systems and processes that they're using that are getting results. We just realign them under this model. And so I want to make sure that's clear, because that's where leader managers get nervous. Oh, I can't afford that kind of churn, that kind of energy in my company right now. And they're correct. They're right. You got to minimize change as much as you can. That's why early in this conversation you said it sounds simple.
Yeah.
It's a simple process that you can communicate with people. Here's what we're doing to go from good to great. We're going to look at these 5 key attributes. We're going to engage you in that process and your recommendations to see what we need to change.
Right.
And so within that, it's very deliberate design process, and it's not about an org chart and putting new names in it. It's about designing the whole organization to get the right results. And given that, when we meet with business leaders, and if you're out there thinking, well, I don't know, am I one of those that could use this?
Yeah.
If you're a business leader or a manager that isn't focused on continuous improvement, well, I don't know what your future looks like.
Maybe consider another route. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Get off the turnpike right now, because you're about to get gridlock.
Exactly.
And so, and you bring up a good point. Think of Denver.
Yeah.
And Denver's explosive growth as an organization.
Right.
It scaled too fast. It didn't look at its infrastructure.
Right.
The strategy might have been there, but did they look at the structure that they need? The lateral processes, the roadways, how to move people, the human capital throughout the organization.
Yeah.
Did they address the lateral processes? Did they look at the metrics they're going to, what they need to achieve and measure those every year over year to get us to, uber millions of people moving here, 500 a day. And then they'd look at how are the people going to have to, really work within the system.
Right.
It scaled too fast.
It did, yeah. They were not expecting that.
Exactly. And as Summer has talked about this resurgent of manufacturing back into the United States, which it's a great problem to have.
Yes.
We are about to scale too fast. A lot of our companies have grown so fast. They've gotten good purchase orders. They got a good product.
Yeah.
But when we sit down with that leader, I just can't get it out the door. Do you measure on-time delivery?
Right.
Do you measure these points of this star?
Right.
And so back again, if you're wondering, could I use this? I would think yes. Can you use it yourself?
Yeah.
Meaning, do you have to bring in a site expert? We have an opportunity coming up to where we'll be, and I'll let Summer cover it, a webinar that we're running to where we can put these tools in your hand.
So on December 1st, we will be hosting a free webinar for anybody that's interested in learning more about organizational excellence. And there's some great visuals to describe the STAR model that the webinar will allow you to see. It's at 12 o'clock, 12 to 1 on the 1st of December, and you can sign up at manufacturersedge.com/events. And as part of that, we are giving people a free org health assessment in order to determine whether or not their system needs this kind of tweaking and refinement.
Okay. So you're offering to literally measure them to see if this is going to help.
Absolutely.
For free.
Yeah, put the tools in their hands.
Exactly. That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Summer had mentioned we are a nonprofit.
Right.
Our charter is to really grow manufacturing, scale them, back to that example that we're using on scaling and scaling too fast from that perspective. And so for us to do that, we don't want to say, oh, we have this great tool, this great methodology, call us. Let's offer it.
Right.
Let's get it out there, and then what normally arises, companies that are ready and ripe to go do it, they'll come forward, we'll partner, and we truly partner. Right. To partnering, a lot of people would say, oh, great, if you're a nonprofit, what are you held accountable to? I'll turn it over to Summer to talk about how we're measured, because if we're wanting to move measurements for manufacturing, what's our skin in the game? How are we held accountable to do that?
Right. So, Alex, this process of organizational excellence is something that we're doing to ourselves. We believe so much in the process that we are all putting together our position expectations, our metrics system. So we are living and breathing what we're trying to teach.
Right.
So for Manufacturer's Edge, as I mentioned earlier, we're part of Department of Commerce.
Yes.
And Commerce invests $1.6 million a year in the state of Colorado to help strengthen U.S. manufacturing. So how they determine whether or not that's being used correctly and getting the impact and results they want, they evaluate us for the companies we serve to get increased sales. They measure how many jobs we're saving or creating.
Right.
What are the cost savings that companies are having as a result of the work that we're doing? And ultimately, how many manufacturers are we working with? So we're trying to get out there to get these tools and systems in place. On top of quality systems, we can help companies get quality systems in place to capture new markets. We can help companies with cybersecurity issues. That's a big thing right now.
It's huge right now, yeah.
It is really big, and especially if you serve Department of Defense, there's a standard that they have to be compliant with by the end of the year.
Okay.
And so we can help companies accomplish that. So we're really a resource to Colorado manufacturers, whether it's organizational health or whether it's a quality system or just general process improvements.
Right. No, that's fantastic. You guys are doing a great job collaborating for other manufacturers across the state. And this model, and I love that you're doing it yourself, right? You're proof in the pudding.
Right.
Exactly. You guys are doing a fantastic job with that. Any last thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'd say that most business leaders, when you sit down and ask them, or managers, or even employees, how's it going? How's your organization?
Yeah.
There's those key questions that they get tired to ask. What keeps you up at night? I just like to ask, what are the pain points in your system? And they get intrigued. What do you mean the pain points? And I think you know where I'm headed with this, right? It's think of your organization as a tool, as a production tool. What are the pinch points? Because there's cogs. These cogs, once again, are strategy, structure, lateral processes, rewards, metrics, and people practices.
Right.
Where are your pinch points in that system?
Yeah.
That tends to drive a pretty robust conversation.
I would imagine so.
It pulls out symptoms.
Right.
Our role in partnering with them is to get to root cause. Root cause of the process or the system or the lack thereof, and then put those systems in place by partnering with them and their most important resource, the people who actually do the work.
Right.
Those are the folks that know what current state is, and if you ask me, we should be doing this to make this impact.
Yeah.
And so so we'll surface those pain points. That's what we'll be talking about in the webinar. The last piece I tell people, and to close, is if you're not happy with how your organization is running, it's perfectly designed to get the results it's getting today.
Oh.
maybe needing to look at the design.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I'll turn it back to you.
Well, thank you very much, both Summer and Shane, for being here. We appreciate working with Manufacturers Edge. We've had quite a few shows with Tom Bugnitz, and so we appreciate you guys coming out. Once again, please check out that free webinar at manufacturersedge.com/events. We'll also have a link at cobrt.com. Look for us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, as well as YouTube. Thank you so much, and we will see you tomorrow.
Sorry we ran early.